Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, just want to welcome you to the Goldmine podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical wisdom to help you unlock your potential and to strive in life and in business. I'm your host, Bennett Santana, and today we're taking a journey deep into the lush heart of Puerto Rico to discover how sustainability and beauty could coexist seamlessly in farming. Joining us is an extraordinary guest, Sarah, how do you say your last name?
Ratliff.
Ratliff, okay. She's the founder of Miami, is that how you say it? Farms?
Yep.
Miami Farms. It's an eco-friendly tropical design consultant who transformed their own land in Utuado, Puerto Rico, to a coffee plantation. It's a thriving paradise of sustainability, productivity, and an ecological harmony. And they've traded their corporate desks for farm life, turning the initial uncertainty into 15 years of passion-driven expertise farming. And so if you ever dreamed of cultivating your own sustainable sanctuary, or wonder about eco-friendly tropical agriculture, or simply want to hear about how to do a corporate leap of faith that could lead to a life of meaningful impact, this episode's for you. And so let's dive right into it to explore how to grow your vision from the ground up. And so welcome, Sarah. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you. Just really, I'm excited to be here, honestly, to talk about agriculture and talk about switching from, a lot of people are having stress in the corporate world. So I'm really happy to talk about how people can think about something that's maybe more meaningful, but also more sustainable and healthy.
Well, and just to let you know, my dad, he retired as a steel worker in 1950 when he was 57 years old, and he's been farming. He's 93, and the lifestyle has really blessed him. And so he's connected. He actually farms about 6 acres. I think you're about how many acres are you there?
We have 15, but we really only farm on about 5.5 because it's just the two of us. So if your father's farming on 6, I'm really impressed that he can do that on his own, because that's a lot of work.
Yeah, he's constantly up there. He has a couple guys that help him out, and he actually sells. Basically, used to sell the econos. His cash crop is cilantrillo or cilantro, But I think before he gets down to the city, the guys that are on the side of the road, they buy all his stuff. And so, and sometimes they'll say, hey, Ben, I got to grab 1,000 bananas on Sunday. He drops them down. I don't know how he gets them. Like I said, but it's still the lifestyle, the fresh water, has kept them healthy. So, to start out, what inspired you to leave corporate America and embrace this farming life? Can you share your story, how it relates to that to the folks?
Sure. So my husband and I used to both work in biotech. We worked at the time, the largest biotech in the world. And
what's the name of the company?
It's called Amgen.
Amgen, very good. Yeah, I think I invested in Amgen some time ago.
So did I at some point. So
Amgen was very big.
Very big. And he was in IT and I was in medical affairs. And we were both stressing quite a lot. And me in particular, I held a unique kind of a hybrid position. I was an executive assistant, but I was also a project manager. And so I ran all the projects in the department, and I did the job of 3 people, essentially, which is kind of my personality. I'm a bit of a type A person. And I would get very, very, very stressed to the point where I would come home and my husband would have, his name is Paul, he would have a glass of wine sitting on the counter as soon as I walked in the door that said, essentially, don't enter our harmony until you have shed all of the stress from the day. So this happened around, I was in my early 40s at this point, and I used to go to the doctor every year on my birthday. And on my 42nd birthday, So I should backtrack. I've been having a lot of stress-related symptoms, heart palpitations, migraines, week-long bouts of vertigo, idiopathic IBS, and I was just a bundle of stress. And my doctor said to me, we've run all the tests we can. We've done sigmoidoscopies, we've done colonoscopies, we've done endoscopies, we've run MRIs on your brain. There's nothing wrong with you but stress. And she said, if you keep going in the way that you're going, you will not live to see your 45th birthday. I was 42 at the time.
Wow.
And she said, you won't make it. So I went home and told my husband, and he said, okay, I've been really seriously thinking about this. I think that we should get out of the corporate world and go buy a farm. And so we did two things. We looked for a sign from Amgen that it was time to leave. And the next one was we started thinking about where we'd like to live. So we'd been to Europe. We're both from the East Coast. I'm from New York City and he's from Washington, D.C. So we looked up and down the East Coast. We looked in Canada. We looked in other countries. We looked at South American countries, Caribbean countries, Europe. I mean, we were open to any living arrangement that could allow us to do sustainable farming. And the question is, what did we know about sustainable farming at the time? Absolutely nothing. But we figured, okay, we're going to learn. So we had that discussion. And then Amgen made it easy for us because they announced RIFs. So they had a black box warning, which meant that somebody or a couple of somebodies died from their drugs, which meant that they lost a lot of market share. So they had to lay off like 10% of their staff. So we volunteered. We said, you know what, we'll volunteer, save two jobs, we'll volunteer. And we put our house on the market, sold our stock, whether it was a stock options or whether it was gifted stock to us for being loyal staff members. And we gave our notice, and that was in April 2008. So this discussion originally happened in December 2007, and April 2008, we put our house on the market. And this was right at the beginning of the Great Recession, and a lot of the houses in our development were already in short sales, were already in foreclosure, had been on the market for 100, 200, 300 days. I mean, it was already the start of the Great Recession. And what year was that? It was April 2008.
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing same time that, I don't know if I shared with you, but I pretty much lost everything in my business, my home. And same 2008, there was a crash in our lives. So, and that's kind of how I started a gold mine, because it's kind of get tested through the fire. But in a sense, you've been tested through the fire, right? That was a big shift. Right. Yeah,
it was a big shift. We started in the fire, but our realtor said to us, one thing we had done very smart was that a lot of people in our tract development had designed their homes to look like pretty much cookie cutter, and we did. We lived in a cookie cutter development, but because we lived, we're not Mexican, but we lived in an area where there are a lot of Mexicans, and so what we did was we were inspired by the beauty of Mexican architecture. So we had already gone to Mexico and picked up tile from Mexico. So our house was really designed very differently from our neighbors' homes. And so he said, you know what? I think that we have a shot of selling your house much more quickly. The third, we didn't even put the sign on the lawn. The third people, he said, he already had a list of 3 Mexican guys who came to look at our house. All 3 of them made offers immediately. And and the one that our realtor had said to him when he came to visit the house was, welcome to your new home. That's who we sold it to. We decided he was the one who really wanted our home the most. And they all came in at the same offering price. So we sold it. We sold right away. People were really shocked because they had their homes on the market for weeks and months, and we sold right away. And we spent 6 months in upstate New York, so we could see family, and because I'm from New York City, he's from DC, so we saw a lot of family. And then we had thought about staying in New York, except that I remembered, having grown up in New York, how cold it is. And I had been living in California for 10 years, and there was no way I could do cold weather again. So we found a vacation rental. Airbnb wasn't big then. We found a vacation rental in the town of Utuado, and we looked for the only property that was not on the beach, because we're not beach people. And we found this mountain farm, and we rented it. And then we asked him, we came down for 2 weeks in August, and we asked him, hey, can we rent this property while we look for property to buy? So we rented for a year and a half. We found property a mile and a half from where we were staying, and we bought it. And I mean, do you want me to share the story of buying the property?
Yeah, share whatever you like.
Okay, so the property was 15 acres. The house had been built in 1957. It was a 500 square foot house, and in it had been a family of 5. And the bedrooms were very small. And so we hired builders to remodel the house. And we're not, and keep in mind, we're not wealthy. We had just come out of California real estate, so we could afford to invest a little bit of money in remodeling. And we expanded it to 1,672 square feet, which by California standards is very small, but for us, it was perfect. And the farm originally had 8,000 coffee trees on it. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, but a lot of the coffee in Puerto Rico is GMO. It was created in a lab, and so we said we didn't come down here to do GMO farming. So we ripped out all the coffee trees, and we hired a mentor. We hired a consultant, and who lives in Las Marias, and we asked him to come and look at the property and say. And so he would give us ideas. Okay, you can plant this here. You can plant this here. Your soil is like this over here. Your sun exposure is like this over here. These are the things that you can plant. And so we got to work. We bought a couple of goats for dairy, and we just started planting a really unique collection of sustainable trees, fruit trees mostly, from South America, Southeast Asia, West Africa, and the Caribbean. And it took a while. It took a while, believe me, because as you probably know, fruit trees can take anywhere between 4 and 15 years to grow. So we had to have a long-term vision of what the property would look like in 15 years or even 10 years. And we planted a lot of bamboo, not the bamboo that you see on the side of the road, but the bamboo that's in South America and Southeast Asia that's sustainable and that doesn't run. And
that's not invasive, because some of the bamboo is invasive, right?
Exactly. So the North American, the temperate climate bamboos are invasive. So we got the kind that are clumping. And so here we are now. We bought the farm in 2009, and we moved in at the end of 2009. And so we've been on the farm since we celebrated New Year's Eve 2009 on the farm. We were completely broke. We had gone through our entire savings, and we were broke. But we had a farm, and we owned it, and we were ready to start our new life.
Can you obviously you mentioned some of the challenges, when you first got to the farm. But what was the biggest challenge that you encountered when you got to the farm, and how did you overcome them?
Probably our biggest we had 2 big challenges. One was money. Because we had blown through our savings, but I can go through how we figured that out. But in terms of farming, the big challenge was that we had come from a temperate climate, and we had to understand how to grow in an environment that is so moist and so humid, and where things grow at an alarming rate. I mean, we joke now and say we live in a veritable rainforest. We don't really, because Utuado is actually considered a dry rainforest or a dry forest compared to like El Yunque. But compared to, say, Ponce or Coamo, it's very wet, and things grow at an alarming rate, including invasive vines. And the other thing was understanding what would grow here that wouldn't grow in the temperate climate, because I think when Americanos come to Puerto Rico, or they come to any tropical area, anywhere in the tropical world, their tendency is to think, oh, well, I can grow apples and pears and all of that. And you realize once you open your mind to, okay, I'm not going to be eating apples anymore unless I buy them in the store, but what I can expose myself to is our fruits, succulent fruits from Vietnam, from Thailand, from the Amazon, from West Africa. What you have to do is kind of open your mind and say, okay, maybe the pears and the fruits, I can have them, the pears and the apples, I can have them every once in a while. But opening your world to all these succulent fruits from various locations, I think that was, initially that was, oh, wow, this is different. Because, I was 43 or 42 by the time we moved here. My husband was 47 by the time we moved here. So we'd had that many years of eating temperate climate fruits. And once we realized that, oh, wow, these fruits are delicious, then that was part of the challenge, but also understanding how to grow here because things grow at an alarming rate, including the invasive vines, realizing you can't go more than a few weeks without removing the vines because they'll strangle the trees. And then, for example, also something like bamboo. Bamboo grows at an alarming rate. So one day you look at it and it's a few feet tall, and the next, few weeks later, it's double the height. And so that was a little bit of getting used to. The money was hard because initially we had blown through all of our savings. We'd blown through by building the house and buying all the fruit trees and getting the goats and getting our farm started. We were broke. So I had to actually go back to work. We made a choice who was going to go back to work. And when Paul was working at Amgen, he worked through a company sometimes. One of the vendors he worked with was a company called NetApp, and they had asked him if he wanted to be the Caribbean rep for the whole Caribbean. He was an IT specialist, and they asked him if he wanted to be the rep. And the pay would have been amazing. But we said to ourselves, we didn't come here for him to be off the farm and all over the Caribbean and not on the farm. So we had to figure out a way for us to make some money and stay on the farm, because I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. I don't know how things are today, but when we moved here, the USDA and the farm CFSE is what it's called here, but it wasn't very friendly toward organic farmers. If we had committed to using pesticides and herbicida and chemical fertilizers, we would have gotten all the assistance we wanted from the Farm Bureau here. But because we chose to go organic, they weren't going to sell us insurance. They weren't going to give us any kind of assistance. So we had to come up with a way to make money while we were producing fruit. And if fruit trees take 3 to 15 years to grow, we had a lot of years to make a living. So both my parents were writers. My father used to be the writer for ABC News, the head writer, and my mother was a writer for the New Yorker magazine. So we figured, what? Yeah, so let me see if I can do writing. So in the period of time we were waiting for things to take off, I started writing, and I became a ghostwriter. And I write for a lot of people. I write biographies, I write autobiographies, I write entrepreneurial books, I write really, you name the topic, I can figure out how to become that person and ghostwrite their book. Relocation to a new country, I figured, okay, we have been through this, I can write about that. And so I've written about a lot of topics, and that kind of kept us afloat for several years. And then I started editing. I started editing in college. So I knew I had the skill to edit, so I started editing also and making money. And then book publishing. I also own a book publishing company. So that has kept us afloat. But at some point, and I'll say this probably happened around the start of the pandemic, because my business started to wane, just like a lot of people's businesses started to wane and even close. A lot of businesses shuttered in the pandemic, including eventually mine. And so Paul and I had to think of creative ways to start making money off the farm. So we created Miami Farms Consulting, where we consult people who are new to the island, who are new to farming in the tropics, how to do what we figured out how to do, both with a consultant, but also we have hundreds of books on cultivation in the tropics. So we have been imparting our wisdom to these clients, and we also do workshops in sustainable bamboo and growing sustainable anything on the farm, animal husbandry. So we've kind of made a switch. I still do the writing and the editing and the book publishing, but really our love in life is to teach people how to do sustainable agriculture in the tropics. That's really that's what we'd like to do 100% of our time, and not have me do any more writing, editing, and book publishing.
But I thought you writing, being able to, you're being a ghostwriter. I thought, for me, I have a book in mind. I've already outlined it, so I thought, wow, what a great connection to have. And so that's something I'd like to talk to you further. I do have some ideas on how to expand that vision of yours, because the world is definitely changing, and the traditional model of coaching is, as I've discovered for myself. In fact, I have 2 daughters and a stepson, and I've launched in to create, a podcast place, a YouTube place, a social media place, all new to me. And just to let you, I'm like journaling. That was something new. I'm journaling my, my trip here every day, which is new. But there are other ways to kind of reach what you're trying to do. But think about it. There's 6 billion people, or 8 billion people. 3 billion are online.
Yeah.
How many farmers want to hear what your message? And they're probably in the thousands, but they're not on the island. They're all over, but they're willing. Yes. So I definitely have some ideas for you later as we
thank you.
Get to know each other more. The other thing you mentioned, the switch from you can't grow apples and so forth. Like my dad. One of the things, the challenges, I like to have vegetables in my food, and in Puerto Rico, a lot of the vegetables is brought in from the States, and not a lot of vegetables are grown here in the islands. Like 15%, I think, is the consumption. And my dad, that's one thing. He was here yesterday, and all we spoke about was what he was planting. He got all these seeds, and he plants it in the spring. And so, there are some adjustments. As he said, he plants cauliflower, onions, tomatoes. They're growing wonderfully.
Wow!
But it's obviously, it depends on your climate, because there's some climate that is more suitable, like for cacao. My daughter is into chocolates, and so last year I said, Dad, I know you're 93. I said, let's plant some fruit trees that. When you're gone, I could create a path and then people who come in different seasons could enjoy different harvests, right? Mm-hmm. And, guava, oranges, and so that's what we did last year. And he says the cacao is growing like gangbusters. I'm like, let's plant some more.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of cacao on our farm, a lot, because it grows quickly from seed. It grows quickly, and it's who doesn't love chocolate, really?
Right. But like in my if I lived here, I'd actually turn my terrace into some garden, either hydro or something, because it's just it's just that there's the lack of fresh vegetables here. It's great to have a way to harvest it, but so as you were here, what were some of the significant breakthroughs or aha moments that you had that greatly improved your farming practice? What was some of the things that you said, aha, this could really work? What were some of your aha moments there?
So we've had a few, and one of them was just figuring out the soil drainage. Soil drainage is a big thing. So, for example, we have 3 rambutan trees on the way other side of the farm. It's about maybe 8 acres away, and roughly, it's a good distance away. And we planted, we'll just say for the sake of argument, one here, and one here. And the one here and the one here are doing so well. They give us so many rambutan every year. The one up here doesn't do so well. And it was because of soil drainage. Even though it's in the same line as the one back here, For whatever reason, the water does not pool underneath that rambutan tree up here. So the one down here is prolific. It's huge. It gives us a lot of rambutan. The one up here, it looks a little bit anemic. It looks like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. So that was an aha moment. I mean, so understanding soil drainage, and understanding drainage, and sorry, I keep saying soil drainage, but drainage and understanding soil types. And so lots of farms in Utuado are clay-like, and so understanding which ones do well or don't do well, more importantly, in clay type of environment. And then one thing that really kind of took us by surprise is the change in the farm from year to year. And you don't necessarily have to have had a hurricane or even a tropical storm, but just the normal. So Utuado gets a significant amount of rainfall every year. Certainly not like El Yunque, which I think is, I think it rains every day of the year in El Yunque, but to some degree or another. But we rain, when we say we have a rainy season, sometimes we'll be in rainy season when the rest of the island is in dry season. And I think that's the case in many of the mountainous towns, Jayuya, Ajunta, Saladas. And so one thing that we noticed is that from year to year, we'd find erosion and derrumbe, which I guess are mudslides. Thank you. So that's an interesting thing, is because even though I'm not bilingual, every so often I can remember the Spanish word but not the English word. So yeah, we'll notice derrumbe that weren't there, mudslides that weren't there one year but suddenly are there the next year. So, and you won't have had to have a hurricane for that. So, and then another thing that kind of changed the way we farm and the way we live is I had gotten a client working for this off the grid. I think that was the name of the publication, and I was writing about agriculture for them. And I'm not necessarily on board with some of their politics. However, one of the things that they preached a lot of was preparation and being prepared for everything, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's who knows what's coming down the pike, whether a pandemic, who knows. And so I started reading a lot of the articles not written by me about preparation. And so we, simultaneous to growing and having our goats and just living a more sustainable life, we also started really embracing the idea of being a prepper or being preppers. And this really had a huge impact on us when Hurricane Maria happened, because we were among, I'm sorry to say, we were among the very few in our barrio who were really prepared for a hurricane, in the sense that we didn't, it wasn't, I think that when people think of a hurricane, they think of, oh, we have to make sure we have enough water. We have to make sure we have enough food. We start preparing a year, 2, 3 years before we even think there could, so in other words, we're prepared for the next hurricane. We've been prepared for years for the next hurricane. And we have a lot of cisterns on the property. We have alternate sources of power. We make sure that we have enough toilet paper, paper towels, and all that stuff to last us literally for a year or two. So, and it sounds expensive, but what we do is that each time we go food shopping, we just pick up one more of an item that we know that we'll need in the future. So those were probably the biggest aha moments, were just understanding what it means to be prepared, because the thing we should not be thinking about days before a hurricane is running out to get chicken or running out to get toilet paper. We should be thinking about making sure our cisterns are filled up, making sure that we have that our generators, if we're not using solar, making sure that there's enough gas. You have gasoline stabilizer. Make sure you have enough gas to last as long. And as you know, power was out for months. We didn't have power on our farm for 9 months, so we had to make sure that the generator could last. And with the incredible lines at the gas station, we had to make sure we were pretty prepared. Make sure you have enough cash on hand. Make sure you have all those things. Make sure you don't have any leaks before it starts raining buckets, and make sure you have tormentillas for the windows to ensure that you don't have any horizontal rain coming in and you don't have any damage, and filling up those cracks in the walls. So really, those were some big aha moments, where just how prepared are we for a natural disaster, and in particular in an area where it's prone to natural disasters. And you can't really prepare for earthquakes any further than you can prepare for hurricanes. But if you're prepared for a hurricane, you're pretty much prepared for an earthquake, unless, of course, the power is taken out, or some of those things happen. But or the foundation of your house cracks. Well, you can't really do much about that. But so those were some big aha moments.
When you do come to Puerto Rico, you have to be prepared. The folks here in Puerto Rico they are used to not having water. In San Juan, the water could stop. I have a 1,000-gallon cistern here, and I'm interested. I'm just talking to the contractor to put in a backup generator, and then eventually solar. We'll be just totally off the grid, but because it's not like in the U.S. where you have that infrastructure, that pipes buried 8 feet below ground, and this is you have to and the Puerto Rican people are really resilient. That's like nothing, and when you do come to Puerto Rico, you just got to assume, hey, you may not have water. Especially after a hurricane. My dad, he has a generator, water, gas. And they're prepared to go a couple weeks without any of the, connection to the grid. So that's something, if you do come here, you got to keep in mind the infrastructure is not going to be here. Thank God, we have a better, after the last hurricane, we have a better cellular network. Because a lot of it got destroyed, and they just rebuilt with 5G, 6G. And so we got the benefit, and obviously there's be some improvements on the grid. But yeah, that's something definitely to keep in mind. And so my next question, so sustainability and ecological balance is clearly the essence of Mayani's farm. And so how do you integrate that principle into farm design? How would you design a farm related to those two things, sustainability and ecological balance?
So there's a lot to consider when you're designing a farm, and design, I think it depends on the person. Like for us, design is the last component. How the farm looks is the last component, because we have to think about things like drainage and sun exposure and what plants will complement. So because we do permaculture versus monoculture, we don't have rows and rows of guineo banana trees. We don't have rows and rows of avocado trees. What we have are plants that complement each other that will do well next to each other. And so we think about, so in permaculture, you have to think about what works well together. And of course, what works in the particular soil type that you've got, the particular drainage you've got in that specific area, and the sun exposure. So for us, we thought about those things first. And we live in our farm is rustic. It's not beautiful in the sense of manicured. It's not manicured at all. It's beautiful in the sense that we've got bamboo next to a jackfruit tree. We've got a coconut tree next to a guanabana tree. We've got what we do is we allow the beauty of the leaves and the fruit that comes from the trees to create the beauty. So torch ginger might go next to bamboo or areca palms, or just to bring out some of so it's not so monotonous just with green. So we bring out some beauty in the flowers as well. And so design is not as important to us, because we know once you live in a kind of a rustic, like you allow Mother Nature to do her thing, then the beauty will come. That's what we believe. The beauty will come. And when we look out, for example, on our patio, you can see plant kind of as far as like a panoramic view. You would see ginger, then plantano, then bamboo, then more bamboo, then a jackfruit tree, then a huge coconut tree, and then more palm trees. And so we just that's how we create the beauty, is allowing Mother Nature to do her job, essentially. And the other part of the beauty that comes is when you live on a sustainable farm, the animals come, the wildlife comes, the guaraguao, the hawks, the snakes, the lizards, the birds. I mean, that also, because they're attracted to the sustainability of it, because they're not attracted to glyphosate and Roundup and pesticides. They're attracted to all of the nature. So the beauty comes with the animals, and then of course the coqui frog and the mainly that's how we create the beauty is to just live in harmony, and then live in harmony with nature, and then the beauty comes is kind of our philosophy on that.
Yeah, that's I see that with my dad, except for we have a view of like 1/8 of the island from where he's at, and then next thing you know, a papaya tree just grows right in front of our view, and I'm like, Dad, can we get rid of that papaya tree? Because I can't see the ocean. And my mom would like, but my dad was like, hey, it grows wherever it grows.
Volunteers, we call them volunteers.
Yeah, we can't. He's like, I'm not going to kill that beautiful tree for the, anyway. That's how.
So that's how nature is.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And so, changing the subject a little bit, let's talk about like beginners that want to enter this tropical climate. What common mistakes do you see beginners make when they first start a farm? What are some of the most common mistakes?
I think the two biggest mistakes I see people making, and we see this in our business and we see this among our friends who have moved here, is first believing that they can grow apples. I mean, that's the first one. They start out with apples, and then they get really disappointed. And we say to them, it's possible if you lived like it's Cerro Gordo, which is, I think, the highest peak in Puerto Rico. It's possible. I mean, I think that you can grow apples in some of the higher peaks.
My dad grows apples, but they're like tiny.
They're little crab apples. Yeah, they don't get very mature.
Right.
And so that's the first one, is people believing that they can just grow whatever they grew in the States. And so we have to explain to them, again, you really have to open your mind and think. And so what we do is we'll give them, so our very first clients are a couple named Annie and Bronson. She's Boricua, he's from the state. Well, they're both from the States, but, and we gave them some, a fruit called achicharu. And we said, just taste it. They and their kids, they have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they were blown away. They said, oh my God, this is so succulent. I mean, the fruits from the tropics sometimes drip because they're just so succulent. And the kids were just like, oh my God, they were getting stickiness all over their hands. They loved it. It was very tactile. It was very tasty. It was great for them and the parents. So now the kids associate us with achicharu. And whenever we come over, now we're friends, we're good friends. And they ask us about achicharu. And then, so we gave them an achicharu tree so they can grow it for themselves. And, so that's one of the first ones is people. Now, this particular couple, they knew that they were in the tropics and they knew that they needed to grow what grows in the tropics. So they consulted us. They have a 1-acre farm. I don't know if I'd call it a farm. It's a backyard, but it's a pretty sizable backyard. And we gave them ideas for where to put their guayaba tree, their bush, their vines, where to put this and that. And based on the slope of their property, based on the drainage, based on a lot of things, and also based on their tastes, because they cook a lot. Both of them are very, very, very good cooks, so we had to take that into consideration too. We know they wanted spices and herbs and things like that. So I think really the very first challenge that we notice is that okay, we can grow whatever we grew in the States or whatever we miss. Maybe it's more a matter of missing because it's comfort food that we want to be able to eat what we ate there. But so opening your mind to realizing what's available, and my God, the tropics cover such a huge part of the world that there's just so much to grow and enjoy. I think another hurdle that people have, again, is the rate with which things grow. And then also not probably realizing that tropical trees can take a while to grow. I mean, it can take, some of them take up to 15 years. So you have to have patience, and you have to be able to have a long-term vision and say, well, I really want this particular type of palm fruit, but I know it's going to take 10 years or 15 years to grow. Those are probably the biggest challenges. Is we as a species are kind of, I think in the modern day, we're kind of accustomed to, we want it now. We're accustomed to impatience, especially if we come from a very developed country. We want everything now. We want the lights to turn on as soon as we turn on the switch. We want the water to turn on. We want everything in a minute. And so I think it's a matter of patience. I think those are probably the biggest challenges. And people probably just not realizing just how different the environment is. And that when you've got something as lively as, well, especially if you're in the interior of the island where it does rain a lot, that is a big adjustment because, in some parts of the U.S., you're used to maybe a lot of rain in the spring, but you don't get you get rain through the summer, but it's not as heavy. But when you've got a pronounced rainy season, and right now we're hoping to be at the tail end of a 24-month rainy season in the mountains. It didn't necessarily affect the rest of the island, but we've had 24 months of continuous rain where it wouldn't go more than 3 or 4 days without raining. We had a lot of floods over the summer in the mountains, not in the mountains, but in the towns, in the mountains, in the town areas, because all the water ran off the mountains. So that's a big challenge for people is farming in the mountains and farming in the mountains in the rain. It's a challenge for me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a challenge. It's not a challenge for Paul. He's Mr. Marine, and he can go out there and he's ready for it all. But me, I'm a little bit of a waif sometimes, and it can be very challenging. So those are probably the biggest challenges we've encountered.
Yeah, so I know my dad, there's sometimes he'll plant something, he goes, hey, the rain killed it all, and he'll plant, and these are things that you have to expect that. And one thing I've seen happen is have all his crops just totally destroyed because of a hurricane or a tropical storm that comes in and kills everything. It's happened. It seems like it's happening more frequently, but
yes.
There's always been a major storm. Like it seems like
Sure.
every 70, 80 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other thing I always tell people, watch the fire ants, right? You never think about that one, but you got to be careful. If not, you're going to be like
hurting all the time.
Yeah, you're going to be running around.
Yep. Yep.
So, but one of the things too. Now, do you use a tiller? How do you till the land? What are some of the basic equipment that a person needs to get started?
Tilling, we never tilled anything. We don't, and bulldozing is the worst thing you can do for the land, because we did it all by hand. We did everything by hand. Yeah. When we bought the property, so we live in the mountains, so we have we call it vertical farming, and it truly is vertical farming. But there is an area outside the house that's very flat. Now the previous owners did bulldoze that area, and we wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have done that because bulldozing is horrible for the environment. But they did it, and so that part of it, and it does benefit us. I won't lie, because then we can have that from the house to where the goats are. It's about 500 or 600 feet, maybe 500 feet, and we have a huge area for the ducks and chickens to do their thing. They scratch the earth. So they live outside. Most of our ducks and chickens are free ranging, and they dig up for animals and insects and everything. And then beyond that are where the goats live. And so we have set up goat pens. But honestly, I think that the goats would have been just as happy if it was a mountain, because of course they like to climb up and down mountains.
Yeah,
so they would have been fine. Yeah.
Yeah. The goats. Yeah, the goats are goats, and they'll go wherever they're called to go. Yeah. Yeah. So in that respect, it's like in my dad, he did when he first got the land, he did bulldoze like 3 shelves, right, 3 levels. It actually works really good with the water drainage.
Oh, good.
But yeah, they always be interested in looking at the fact of what's the impact it does on the soil, and obviously it depends. Where my dad is very high up in the mountains, it's volcanic. The soil is orange soil. But what he has to deal with are boulders the size of cars that he chips away little by little until he breaks them in half. So, and he's done that, and then he pushes it off. So it was you just have to be, you have to anticipate every aspect from the ants to boulders. But the also thing, I don't know if you've mentioned the importance of water and where you get that water, because not all properties have water that's attached. My dad gets the water from actual spring. It tastes better than Dasani water. When you drink, and I drink it, straight from where the pipes that come down.
Absolutely.
So how do you get your water? What do you recommend in terms of that when you're looking at a farm?
Definitely look for a property with water, because the unfortunate thing is that if you think that you're going to get clean drinking water from aqueducto, not a good idea. There's chlorine in there, there's fluoride in there, and there's also glyphosate in there. So those are the things we know about. I don't even want it. I just don't even want to think about what else is in there if those 3 toxic ingredients are in there. So, you want to have a pozo, a quebrada, a stream, or something. You really do want to look for a property that has a fresh source of water, and build a cistern right next to the water source and pump it up. If you're in the mountains, pump it up, because generally speaking, it's going to be below the property, below the house. Pump it up to the property, to the house, and use that for your drinking water. We do have aqueducto for everything else, for washing clothes, even washing ourselves, but we do not drink the water. We don't cook with the water. I highly recommend. But it's one of those. No, go ahead.
I think for the Caribbean, it's the kind of the best water that I see. But obviously, like I have over here 4 filter systems, and I'm surprised if I showed you 9 weeks of one filter, you wouldn't believe it.
No, I do. It's so. I mean, I've even heard stories of gallinarias and vaquerias, so cow farms and chicken farms that allow their feces of the animals to get into the quebrada that runs into the reservoirs. So I've heard stories about that. I don't know if it's true, but I can say
that happens. Think about Chicago. The Chicago River was a common practice on the Chicago River in Chicago, right?
Yes.
And, in fact, they're still trying to nail down. There are some old buildings that actually, they flush into the Chicago River today, right? And I kayak the river. So, that definitely, there's been a lot of work to clean that up. And especially in the mountains, you won't, obviously upstream is usually just really nothing.
Safer.
It's safer.
It's safer for sure.
But even, thank God, it's not the type of thing where we're getting sick like in, some other country.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
because there are filter systems here, and the water is safer here certainly than in less developed, really truly developing countries. Sure, that's absolutely a fact. Yeah,
but definitely run it through a filter.
Yes,
if you're going to drink it, run it.
If you're going to drink it, yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I have I have a friend who actually built a well in his home, and he put these massive filters on them. He has like a ultraviolet one, which I thought was a good idea to have.
Yes, ultraviolet is great.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm planning on integrating, the ultraviolet light that goes in.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea.
So Jet, I wanted to talk to you about the long-term vision for the Miami farms. What do you envision for the next 10, 15, 20 years for you guys?
So we have a couple of visions in mind. Well, I should say our farm is on the market. We are selling our farm, and the reason being is that when we came to Puerto Rico, and this will tie into our long-term vision. When we came to Puerto Rico, of course, we had no knowledge of farming in the tropics, and so the first 10 years were just learning, keeping our mouths shut, just learning, and trial and error, consulting our mentor. Oops. Oh, you got the farm up. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just gonna give them a little view.
Sure. Yeah. And so now that we fully understand how to farm in the tropics, and now that our trees are mature and they're all bearing fruit, most of them, there are a few that are still in that process, and because they take 15 years to fruit, we're bored. We're genuinely bored. Like, we're ready to take a new farm and rehab it from the beginning and start all over again. And what we want to do is turn over stewardship of this farm to someone who has the same level of eagerness that we had when we moved here, the same level of optimism, the same level of excitement, and turn this into something maybe even more spectacular than we were able to do. Maybe they'll take the vision to another level. And so we're trying to do two things with that. So that's part of the vision. The other part of the vision is to continue holding workshops. We do workshops for people who are brand new to sustainability, and we teach them about animal husbandry. We teach them about farming in general in the tropics, and about the various types of bamboo. Also, what to grow to feed animals, because in a place like Puerto Rico, in a place like the U.S., in a place where any developed country, most farmers tend to rely on grains to feed their animals, and those grains are generally GMO, and I mean, they have some nutrients in them. I'm not going to say that they're terrible, but they generally are GMO, unless you can buy ones that are not GMO, but they're very, very expensive. So part of what we grow is not just for us to eat, but also for our animals, making sure that they eat a very rich diet. So our goats eat a diet of indigo, like what used to dye the jeans was a plant called indigo. They eat guayaba, they eat plantano leaves, they eat guineo, they eat ginger leaves, they eat mango leaves, and they eat bejucos, thankfully, because they grow so insanely here. They eat a lot of foods so we can just grow them, and they have ready-made food, so we feed them off the farm. So those are our short-term vision is, at this moment, is to sell the farm, is to buy another farm and rehab it and start from scratch while we're still young. I'm 58, my husband is going to be 63. And while we're still young, because we absolutely intend on living as long as your father is alive.
That's I'm 63 right now, and I asked my dad, I said, "Hey, Dad, you got to live a long time." He goes, "Why?" I goes, "Because I'm following in your footsteps. So you get to 100, I'm
going to get to 100.
Right, it gives you a runway. But the thing is, if you're eating good, the lifestyle, the reason why he sweats every day, he drinks water every day, he exercises every day, and above all, he has a purpose. And that's why, they say the average person dies after 5 years of retirement, and I really believe it's because,
they don't have a purpose.
Golf all day. Yeah, they lose their purpose, and the golf game actually kind of gets tiring.
It does.
So it's great that you see. I love the word you use, steward. My wife has a nonprofit called the Miracle Center. She has a 43,000 square foot building that she just purchased recently. It was an old Lutheran church that was sold under COVID, and her and I look at that for lifetime stewards. And so that's the one thing. It's like we can't. Unfortunately, you don't take a U-Haul when you pass away with you. You're improving. Whatever you have, whether you have a car or an apartment, that you're really improving it for someone else because you can't really consume it. So that's the whole thing that we are stewards. That's the
Yes.
that's the right mindset to have.
Yeah.
And when you have that mindset, I think opportunities will open up for another place for you to steward that's even grander and gives you purpose. How would, if someone was interested in sustainable farming in the tropics, how would they reach out to you? What's the best way for them to contact you? And especially if they want to have you ghostwrite for them or do some
Sure.
consulting, what would be a way for them to connect with you?
Thank you for asking. So our website is mayanifarms.com. So it's MAYANI farms.com. And my writing, editing, and book publishing is purpleworkspress.com. So PURPLEWORKSPRESS.com. And so, yes, I definitely still do a lot of ghostwriting. And we had talked earlier, I've become very picky about the projects I work on now because I feel like I want them to breathe sustainability. Now, sustainability is an interesting word because we tend to think of it in terms of agriculture, but sustainability can also be, to sustain something. It really just literally means to sustain something, and anything that I believe can help others to improve their lives. And sustainability looks different for every person. And the kind of projects that you're doing, I think, are sustainable. They're long-term. There's long-term growth in them, and there's the ability to teach others to do the same. And for that reason, it's sustainable. So absolutely, I would be honored to work with you on a future project. And
Absolutely.
I would love that.
So Dad. So one of the the reason I started Goldmine Business Academy was that gold gets refined in the fire, right? It's a process that it's interesting that even in Genesis it pointed out there was gold in the river, and imagine years ago, hundreds of years ago, there was gold in the rivers up in the mountains, right, here in Puerto Rico.
Yep.
But in order to process it, that you got to heat that up, and what happens is the dross gets taken off, and then you have purity, and that's the reason why I call it gold mine, because when you do go through these trials, what you went through in 2008 actually is a refining process, right? You could have stayed where you were, got another job in pharmaceuticals, been fine. You would have been in a neighborhood, and it's the same old thing, going to the mall, or but you guys chose to try something different.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part of life, where you tried something different. You weren't afraid to go out there. You didn't you understand, and you didn't really have a barrier, because a lot of times people think money is a barrier, knowledge is a barrier. All these family relationships are a barrier. You don't want to leave them, but really, in order to really grow, you gotta, leave town, so to speak, sometimes, to change your mindset.
Absolutely.
And not be afraid to have some days where you don't need anything, right? You can't be afraid.
100%. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't let fear rule you, because I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm afraid to move to Puerto Rico because I don't speak Spanish." You know what? We moved to Utuado, and we didn't speak any Spanish when we moved here. And sure, it's much easier if you live in the metro area or in Rincon or somewhere where there are a lot of Americanos. It's much easier. We purposely chose to live in an area where we were among very few Americanos, and so that it would force us to not just communicate, but build a community. Because communication is good, for sure, but building a community and assimilation is huge. And so from the very beginning, from our very first vacation in Utuado, we started making friends. We would drive down the hill to go to go food shopping, and we'd say hello to everybody as we were coming down the hill. And we learned, everybody says, yo, yo, yo. And so we learned. And then within a few days, people were inviting us to their homes to eat dinner, to meet their families. And, we barely could communicate with people. We were, polite, and we were always, we tried between hand gestures and Rosetta Stone. And we tried very hard to communicate, and we made a lot of friends in the community. And this has kind of been our approach to everything: is you can't let fear rule you. And I understand the need for people to feel like they want to be among themselves. They want to live amongst people who are like them. But I say, take a leap of faith and drop yourself in the middle of nowhere where you know nobody, where you don't speak the language, and make friends, make connections, meet the people who are also doing farming, and even people who aren't doing farming. And because I can assure you that will pay off one day. And I have an example. So when we were living in the rental property, we were going back and forth because it's only 1.5 miles from here. So we were going back and forth looking at just dreaming about what our house and our farm was going to look like when it was finished. And we moved in. We had already purchased cisterns, but we hadn't filled them up. Do you know that the day after we moved in on New Year's Eve, December 9th, New Year's Eve, 2009, the very next day, the water went out. It didn't just stay out for a day. It stayed out for 3.5 weeks while they fixed the road. We had no water. No aqueducto. We hadn't even discovered our pozo, our stream. So we told our neighbor, Olga, whom I call Olguita, la loquita, la jefa del barrio. If you need anything, you need garbage pickup, you need water, you go to Olga, and she's going to be the one to tell you how to do it. She's got her ear on the pulse of everything, and she grew up in that house that she lives in. She's been here 73 years, and she knows everybody in the barrio. And we told her we didn't have water, and she said, you can take showers, you can wash your clothes here, you can siphon. They also have community water. She said, you can drink our water, you can do everything. She said, our house is your house. And I can assure you that if this had happened when we were living in California in our little development, our neighbors would not have been so hospitable. We are eternally grateful to Olguita, La Loquita. And she really is quite out there. So, she loves that name. She calls herself La Loquita. She's out there, but she's the most helpful person on the planet. And through her, we made other friends in the barrio. And I'll tell you, after Maria hit, we were sandwiched in between two mudslides or two landslides, and we were trapped. And so Paul could cut the trees that had fallen, but we couldn't get out. We needed a digger. Somebody came with a digger, and they checked on us. People check on you. I think I had heard from many people that after a hurricane, you really understand the value of community and the value of love and support. You really understand it after a hurricane in Puerto Rico. And let me tell you, people came to check on us. The lone Americanos. We couldn't contact our families and our friends to let them know we were safe. We had no cell service. We had no electricity. We didn't know how to contact anyone. They came, they checked on us. Do you have enough food? Do you have enough water? Do you have enough everything? We did, of course, have enough of everything. But the fact that we did not feel alone after such a major catastrophic event speaks volumes about people and relationships. People really have to just, and we're different. We dress differently. We talk funny. We have funny Spanish. We have funny accents when we talk in Spanish, but our differences embrace us instead of separate us, and so that's really crucial when you're moving to a new country, whether you speak the language or not. Is immediately start to embrace the community and make friends, because you have no idea when you're going to need them or when they're going to need you.
Well, it's very great point, and I've been coming to the mountains here since I was 8 years old, and I've seen it transform to it was hard to describe it when I was 8 years old to see there was no infrastructure up there. There weren't telephones. There wasn't
electricity.
You didn't have running water.
Yeah.
You didn't have a bathroom in the house then.
Nope.
You had an
outhouse.
Mm-hmm. And back then I saw hundreds of young kids in the mountains. But now when I go up, you see very rare young people. Why? Because I run a government program where I hired interns for the federal government called Internship for Diversity, and I'm getting those interns, students here. They're all engineers. They're all college educated,
exactly.
And what they want is a great job in the United States.
Exactly.
But one thing is that I do know personally, someone who's from Puerto Rican heritage that is interested in farming. That's interested, and I think this would offer a great opportunity, obviously for anyone, but in particular, I always advocate the first, second generation Puerto Ricans to come back to the island, do the farming. Like in my case, I'm involved here. Although I was born in Indiana, my dad lives in Jauco. To enjoy this, to try something different, and so I just want to thank you for the time that you spent with me, and how as I reached out to you and you said, hey, let's talk, and
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, so
thank you.
So anyway, to the folks listening, I just want to encourage you, if you get a chance, hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Please leave us a comment. Please reach out to Sarah. And if there's anything, if you want me to, if there's anything I could do personally, just contact me via Messenger or leave a comment. So again, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate you and your husband taking time out today for this talk. And so appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, Bennett. It was a real pleasure. It really was. I've been on a lot of podcasts for various topics, and of them all, I always love to talk about sustainability, and also just love to just, I don't know. I mean, it felt very natural. Like I felt like this was it was very natural to talk to you. You're a very good interviewer, and you like to, you like to stay on point, but you're also good at listening to hear the last response, and then it kind of influences your next question. So you've been a really awesome interviewer. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hit that subscribe button, everybody.